Bus Advisory Board meeting. I'd like to start the meeting and remind everyone present that this meeting is not subject to the 1972 Local Government Act and therefore can continue to take place virtually. It is only the board members that are taking part in the discussions at this meeting. Others in attendance are there to provide advice to the board. The agenda and the papers have been published on the council's website in advance of the meeting, and the council will be making a recording of this meeting, and this will be published on the council's YouTube channel and website in due course. Today's meeting will be run virtually via Microsoft Teams. Other elected members and officers may remotely join the meeting to speak on specific items or observe. Other members of the public and partners can observe the meeting remotely via Microsoft Teams. There is also some provision for any members of the public to speak at the meeting via the public questions or statements that have been submitted in advance. Just for good practice, please use the meeting chat function only for purposes of the meeting, primarily to indicate to the chair that you wish to speak. Please only speak at my invitation after raising your hand virtually. Please say your name before speaking, and it's important to turn off microphones and cameras when not speaking. Okay. Just like to make a few notes. Sadly, Joe Morris has now left Somerset Council and will no longer be supporting the Bus Advisory Board. However, I'd just like to put on record our deep thanks to her for all the work she's done in providing and organising the meetings. And on that note, I'd like to welcome Lee Wilmont and Claire Dickin, who will be providing support for us in the future. So I'd like to welcome you both to taking up support on this role, and I believe you'll also be supporting the bus user and stakeholder group. So you just make yourself known, Lee and Claire.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, we're happy to be supporting this public meeting and the bus users group. I think eventually Lee will be your clerk.
Okay, thank you both. Right, we'll move on to apologies for absence. So do we have any apologies for absence, Lee?
And we haven't received any, no.
Okay, that's good. And we'll move on to minutes of the previous meeting held on the 15th of October. So I'm going to request any alterations or approval that it's an accurate and correct record. Do I have any suggestions or alterations, or can I just move to a vote of approval? So I'm just going to put up my that thing just to make sure. Yeah, no, I don't see any of that. So could I have a first and seconder for approval, please?
Happy to do that, Richard.
Okay. Sam, do you want to second that?
Yeah, happy to, Richard. Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll take that as approved. Right, we move on to public question time. Now, I believe we had one question that was submitted within the timescale, and we had two questions that were late submissions, and I've taken the opportunity to say that we will hear the late submissions, but I would ask that in the future that we could try and get any questions in on time, as it makes it a lot easier for us to answer them more fully. So first question, I believe, is from Melanie Goodchild. Is Melanie on the call? I'm guessing not. In that case, could I ask the clerk to read Melanie's question?
I have no problem, Chair. Melody's question was, now that the council has more influence over bus routes since the recent legislative change within the buses bill, October 1st, are there any plans to reinstate a more regular circular bus that will pass close to Fullan's Court TA1 3DF? Could the council please consider reinstating this service even with a less regular timetable of, say, hourly?
Okay. And in answer to that, the new Better Buses bill has not come into effect yet, and we wait to understand further details and the implications for local transport authorities. However, we are considering our options for serving Fullan's Court and hope to be able to provide you with more of an update in due course. Okay. And second question, like I say, this was a late submission, but I think it's important that we do answer these. So I've tasked our officers to look into this, and that's from Lee Fletcher. I believe he's not on the call today. So again, I'm going to ask our clerk to read out the question. I think it's a bit of a longer question this time.
Lee's question is, at the extraordinary meeting of Wiltshire Council on devolution on Thursday, 9th of January 2025, where the vote was overwhelmingly in favour of Wiltshire joining Somerset and Dorset councils to move forward with our new Heart of Wessex mayoral combined authority, Wiltshire Council leader Richard Kluwer publicly backed bus franchising for the Heart of Wessex area, saying that bus franchising is a potential significant strength for us, and to have more control over buses would make a great deal of sense. Richard Kluwer was also quoted on the BBC on Friday, 10th of January 2025 regarding the potential for Heart of Wessex bus franchising as we could see a revolution in bus provisions in rural southwest England. The hope and expectation now is that Richard Kluwer's comments will prompt similar statements from the leaders of Somerset and Dorset councils, along with the recently Heart of Wessex committed Bournemouth. Christchurch and Poole Council back in bus franchising for the Heart of Wessex area. Therefore, in recognition of this growing momentum towards the introduction of bus franchising in our areas, we have put together a Heart of Wessex bus franchising team that so far has 25 representations from right across the proposed Heart of Wessex area, drawn from passengers, bus users and advocacy groups, stakeholders, businesses, town and parish councils, along with experts with experience in bus franchising who are working together to devise and put forward highly credible bus franchising proposals for the Heart of Wessex area, with more joining every day. Therefore, please will Somerset Council, bus operators in Somerset and other interested members of the Bus Advisory Board agree to meet with the Heart of Wessex bus franchising team at the earliest opportunity to begin work on a shared vision for how to take Heart of Wessex bus franchising forward for the benefit of all concerned.
Okay, in response to that, clearly it's too early in the process of establishing the Heart of Wessex Authority to comment on its priorities, and we await government's response to our expression of interest. But it is fair to say that Somerset has been leading in the establishment of the Heart of Wessex, so we have a huge interest in this area. But at this point, we still await, like I've said, what the priorities will be when and if it's set up. Okay, we've also got a late submission from Linda Snelling. Linda, I presume you're on the call. Tony, I'll take questions. This is not a point for taking questions, I'm afraid. Linda, are you
Linda
here?
isn't on the call. I'm afraid she's not well at the moment.
Oh, okay. Could you send us our best wishes? I'll again. Sorry, Lee. Could you read out Linda's question?
Linda's question was given in 4 parts. So the first part is given that it is recognised that Somerset needs to see growth and investment in its public services to build a strong backbone in sustainable transport in its bid to reduce emissions, congestion, and reduce private car use, I would like to ask that Buses of Somerset, the number of PVR used in today's service running compared to 2023, because it is noted that each time we have seen a network change, there seems to be a decrease in fleet that can be confirmed. Can this be confirmed? Sorry. And if so, how does this fit with the needs of residents in Somerset? Part 2. Given we are heading towards April, another network change will we see further reductions, and what is being done by Buses of Somerset to mitigate service decline? Part 3. I also want to raise the unreliability of Buses of Somerset across the whole network. With the latest disruption of Service 22 being raised in House of Commons, given most announcements are classed as operational issues, I would like to know what proportion of this disruption is down to engineering breakdowns and faults, and what is down to staffing issues, and what is being done to rectify this situation because it is impacting bus use. And part 4, and finally, to ask why Yeovil Depot does not have the spare buses as promised, given its distance from Taunton and Weymouth, because it as a result, it means that breakdowns and faults are greatly impacting the south of the county services, again affecting people's livelihoods and damaging the confidence in travelling by bus.
Okay. I'll answer question 2, and this will be covered on the agenda under April timetable changes, and the operators will be providing an update. As for the other questions, as the other questions are really operator specific, we have shared them with South West, and they may be able to provide you with an update. Otherwise, we will ask them to follow this up with you separately. Okay. I think that it concludes questions. I know that it probably asks as many questions as it answers, but that's where we are at this point. So I'll go on to part 4, which is membership update. I'm just confirm that we've had various requests to review the board membership, and we want to take the time to consider these requests and review our arrangements in neighbouring authorities before we draw any conclusions. We will bring this back to the board in due course, and I do understand that we need to get this right. So I'll just put that there. We will now move on to section 5, which is BSIP funding allocation. I'm sure this is the bit that everybody's been waiting for, so I'm going to hand on to Natasha to give us an update.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Natasha Bates, the Service Commissioning Manager for Passenger Transport within Somerset Council. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. Just bear with me one moment. Right, hopefully you can see the presentation. Oops. Can you see that, Richard? Can you just give me a thumbs up? Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Okay. So this morning I'm going to talk you through our BSIP funding allocation for 25-26 and our high-level plans. So just to give a little bit of the background, there was no requirement for us this time round to actually submit a bid for funding to the DFT. And instead, what the DFT are doing is they calculated the allocation for local transport authorities based on a new formula funding they have devised. So they are looking at local transport authority population, bus mileage, and level of need within an area, and coming up with a formula in terms of how much they're going to allocate. Just to note that this funding replaces the previous BSIP Plus funding. So that was the funding we were issued to support services struggling and at risk following the COVID pandemic and the recovery phase, and also the general BSIP funding for enhancing and transforming public transport. So that funding has now been combined into one pot, and you may hear it referred to as the bus grant by the DfT. So Somerset's been awarded approximately 3.3 million in capital and 2.9 million in revenue funding. So we didn't actually receive formal notification of the award until the 20th of December, so just before the Christmas period. So we've really been picking it up this year since the beginning of January to look at what this means for us, particularly as the terms of use were issued at the same time. So having looked at the terms, I think it's fair to say that they are fairly flexible in terms of capital and revenue usage. So last time they were very prescriptive around the capital funding and that the majority of it had to go into bus priority, but that doesn't seem to be the case this time. However, it is clear that local transport authorities cannot reduce their public transport base budgets and subsidise those budgets with this grant. So this is additional funding. And that funding needs to be spent by March 2026 unless there are very exceptional circumstances for why that cannot be spent by that date. And so what we need to do now is local transport authorities need to submit a delivery plan to the DfT by the 31st of March this year. And that needs to set out how we propose to use the funding, and that needs to be accompanied by a signed memorandum of understanding signed by our Section 151, so our relevant finance officer. So that's just a bit of background. And so what have we done to date? So in order to kind of develop our high level funding themes, what we've done is we have met with the larger bus operators in the county, talked through the funding allocation, our proposals, any proposals and ideas that bus operators have had, and tried to pull all of those thoughts together. We've reviewed our existing BSIP schemes, so looking at what we're funding at the moment and how well those are working and continue to run. We've also reviewed the most recent BSIP. So back in the summer of last year, we had to update our BSIP and resubmit it to the DfT to set out our ambition and proposals for public transport for 2025 and beyond. So we've gone back through and looked at what we've suggested we would like to do if we had more money. We've had proposals received from the Somerset Bus Partnership with indicative costs, and again we've been working through those and reviewing the suggestions. I think it's fair to say that we have really appreciated the suggestions and the indicative costs, but just at this point, just to manage expectations, just to highlight that we do feel that some of those kind of costs are a little bit on the low side, particularly looking at electric vehicles and the Yeovil bus station, but still really helpful to have those suggestions. Thank you. We then had a discussion with the bus user and stakeholder group on the 19th of December, and we've taken feedback from that meeting to feed into our considerations. And alongside all of this, we've also had quite a number of requests and suggestions from interested parties such as parish councils, town councils, other people interested in the use of the funding, and they've suggested how we might use this moving forward. So again, we're considering all the information we're receiving to come up with these high-level funding themes. So in terms of next steps, so obviously timescales, as always, are all very tight to fit in with our governance processes and the DfT deadlines. So we're obviously here to the high-level themes at the Bus Advisory Board. And then we will be taking a report to the Planning and Transport Subcommittee on the 11th of February. And that committee will be asking them to agree the high-level themes and then delegate the final decision for specific schemes to the lead member for Transport and Waste. From there, we move on to scrutiny, which is the 17th of February, and there'll be an opportunity for further review and for scrutiny to provide their comments and feedback. And then we've got a lead member delegated decision booked in for the 13th of March. And then once that decision is taken, that will provide us with the information to populate the delivery plan that we need to submit. So moving on to funding themes. So at the moment, we're looking at key themes, and what we'll do is develop a list of schemes that are achievable within the allowance we have. So the list won't be exhaustive. We won't be able to include everything that was kind of set out in our ambition, but we will develop more proposals if we then receive more funding in the future, or we find we have an underspend as we go through the 25-26 year. So just to highlight, the funding we've been allocated is for a 1-year period. We don't know what will follow, but there is suggestion that there may be multi-year settlements that follow, which will give us a bit more certainty for the future. So what we want to do is to replicate the success in Taunton through the BSIP round 1 of funding. And therefore, what we'd like to do is to continue schemes in Taunton that are working well. And I think at this point, it's important to highlight that whilst the £1.50 fare scheme trial has been popular and achieved the result of increasing patronage following the COVID period, it has been quite an expensive scheme, and we don't feel it would be best value to continue this scheme and try to roll it out to other towns. So that would take a significant amount of funding, and we feel that the funding is better used to improve bus services and provision in the county for passengers. So therefore, that scheme will end on the 31st of March 2025, so later this year, which was the original trial end date. So just worth pointing that out at this stage. And then in terms of the kind of the package we've had in Taunton, we'd like to deliver a similar package of schemes in Yeovil, and I'll come on to that in more detail on my next slide. Sorry, excuse me. And then also a similar package of schemes in Bridgewater. And then we've got a kind of package of other targeted initiatives, and I'll explain that in more detail, and then some county-wide initiatives. So to give you a bit more information around what we're thinking under each of these themes. So under the Taunton Town package, we've got evening services that are currently funded in kind of running in and out of Taunton. So we are reviewing those and continue to review those with the operators to work out which ones are working well and whether we continue all of them or some of them beyond March. We will review any BSIP Plus funded services within the area to see again what happens to those beyond March and whether we need to continue funding those. We'll look at the park and ride fare in the Taunton Town to look at what we do with that. So that park and ride fare is separate to the £1.50 fare scheme. It requires a lot less funding than the wider scheme, and is actually doing really well in terms of park and ride patronage. So we need to review that, and also looking at transport hubs within the Taunton Town package to see if there's anything we need to do with those. And then in terms of the Yeovil Town package, so what we would like to do there is look at evening services and look at how we can kind of replicate the model that we had in Taunton. So in Taunton, we have services that are commercial during the day. And what we're doing is we're just topping that up with some additional funding to put some extra journeys on in the evening up to about 11 o'clock. So we'd like to take that model and do the same thing in Yeovil. We need to review the BSIP Plus funded services that are currently running in and around the Yeovil area to again look at what level of support they might need beyond March. And then we'd also like to look at other service improvements and trials that we could potentially look at to enhance the package of the network in Yeovil. And alongside that, we would like to look at bus priority signal improvements. So we have a similar scheme in Taunton where we're looking at improving signals at junctions to allow buses priority, and it deals with kind of congestion hotspots or pinch points. So we'd like to look at that in the Yeovil area, and we're working with operators to identify where the kind of areas of congestion might be that need to be tackled. And then also in here, we have got a feasibility study for Yeovil Transport Hub. We will be working with the regeneration team who are working on the kind of Glover's Walk area and make sure that we're all joined up in terms of a feasibility study for Yeovil. I think it's just important to highlight here that because of the funding timescales, it's not going to be possible to actually deliver a transport hub in Yeovil in that time. So we'd like to do all the feasibility study and get ourselves in a good position so that if future funding becomes available, we know what we want to deliver and we're in a position to move forward. And then we've got a Bridgewater Town package. And again, very similar to Yeovil, looking at evening services and where we can deliver those in and around the town, looking at other service improvements and trials that we could put in place to enhance the network. You'll notice it doesn't have BSIP Plus funded services on this list, and that's because we don't currently have any BSIP plus funded services in the Bridgwater area, so we don't need to review those. And again, a similar package of bus priority signal improvements and a feasibility study for Bridgwater Transport Hub. So those are the three kind of main town packages. And then moving on to other targeted initiatives. So again, I've mentioned BSIP plus funded services. We've got other services that are in operation across the county, and we need to review those and again see how much funding or support they might need going forward. Looking at digital demand responsive transport. So we have our trial in the Somerton area, and we would like to try and roll the digital element out to the rest of our DRT services. So we might kind of do a staggered rollout, but looking at where we could introduce the booking app and website to the existing services, which means that people can book the service at any time rather than having to wait for a phone line to be open during office hours. And it would mean that people could book their journeys up to an hour before they need to travel. Then we've got some other service improvements and trials we're looking at. We've had lots of suggestions of where we might be able to look at things, so we're going to review those, and that includes some decarbonisation projects that Somerset Bus Partnership put forward. So we're looking at those. And feasibility studies for improvements to other transport hubs, so outside of those key towns, looking at other transport hubs that may need some improvements. And the final thing on there is the trial of carrying bikes on buses. So this was something that got added into our BSIP 2024, and our planning and transport subcommittee were very keen that we trial this initiative. So we are looking at this, but just to add that it is dependent on us finding a willing operator who thinks that they've got a viable route that we can trial this on. So we're just looking at options at the moment. And then finally on to county-wide initiatives. So we are looking at developing an online county-wide bus map and timetable booklet. So we are working with First at the moment to see what we can deliver in terms of expanding their booklet and map and including all operators' services on there. So we have one central kind of point of reference. Then looking at marketing, promotion, monitoring and evaluation. Obviously, if we're investing money into new schemes, we want to promote them, we want people to be aware of them, we want people to use them, and then we need to monitor how well they are being used. We've got suggestions for a stop, design and improvement programme, so really looking at bus shelters across the county. This is a new function for us under the new Somerset County or the new Somerset Council umbrella. So we just need to come up with a strategy of how we're going to manage this moving forward, having minimum standards for our bus shelters, and then starting to roll out those improvements across the county. That features in there. And then the final point on there is bus passenger information. So looking at real-time information and where it might be appropriate to install this information. So we're not suggesting that that would go into every bus stop in the county, but we're looking at key hubs and interchanges. So that's just a very quick run through of kind of the high level funding themes that we're looking at. And yeah, so I'll hand back to the chair for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. So yeah, waiting for a few hands to pop up, really. I'm sure there will be. Straight in there with David Redgewell.
Thank you, Richard. So a few things I'm interested in to just say. Natasha, we run a number of services jointly with North Somerset and the fact that 126, and obviously it's important that the passenger involvement of both communities on the North Somerset Council side and on Somerset side to get that service back, including business, parish councils and Longleat Estates, which is Cheddar Caves. We just make sure that there's a full conversation with North Somerset Council, Hannah Young, Richard, and with Wecker over that issue. I'm also fully aware that we've got the 375, 376, 374, which
David, can I just say that we're talking about the BSIP allocation?
Yeah.
So could you
I believe the BSIP allocation, the 126, was a BSIP funded service. So I'm
yeah,
just
but
So I'm just
I
concerned
don't
that we.
want you to roll off every
No, I won't roll all
bus
the numbers.
service.
I'll make the point. The point is, Rich, I think I'll just say, can we talk to Wecker and North Somerset about the cross-border issues? That's my most important thing. That wasn't in your list, Natasha, and that's what alarmed me a little bit. On the issue of Bridgewater, well, we have a transport hub there. It needs some modernisation, but it doesn't need full rebuilding. So it probably needs a built information, needs some facility improvement, maybe lighting and community safety, but I don't think it needs a complete. But the thing that worries me most is it's only a year, and then we need to know what the government's 3-year allocation for buses will be. So spending, extending the contracts is one thing with First PLC South, but anything with the West of England is one thing, but obviously going and setting up new contracts, we're not sure what Rachel Reeves or what Heidi Alexander's planning for the next 3-year programme, and I think that's why it's only 1 year. So I think most councils are just rolling over their contracts plus maybe some enhancements, but we don't want to be in a situation where we then cancel routes in 2020 7 because there isn't the money. So we do need to be wary of that. I think there's expectations, and I've said this Somerset Bus Partnership, being risen to such a degree that it's unaffordable, and realistically the cost of buses are not cheap. £300,000 to run a series of services doesn't go far. £3 million will not go far. I know that from just trying to do some work in the north and how little money it buys with First PLC or with Stagecoach. So I put that caution there. But I do think the long-term plan, I do think he's right to concentrate on the principal urban areas where growth and regeneration is important, plus the rural links. But Bridgewater is taking growth, Yeovil will take economic growth. And I think the trick here is to follow through the economic development. The government's interested in growth, housing and employment. And if we fit that bill, and those are the big urban centres in Somerset, then we should start to move to get more money in the future. And I think that will help us with the bid for Yeovil. On the issue of Taunton, I've got scars for it, but I'm happy to have those scars. What negotiation discussion are happening with First? We've done some work with them in Wecker. Because I think a rise from £1.50 to £3 national fare cap in Taunton would drive people off the bus network. In Wecker, we managed to secure a £2.40 not £3 fare in the principal urban areas. Richard, I think I just ask you to get in there with negotiations around Taunton and see what we can thrash out, because I don't want to drive that growth away from the Taunton bus network. And I do think it needs a long discussion with First Group PLC as to how we go forward in the way we've had with them which is being successful in the West-Supermare, Bath and Bristol area. I think those are my main points. Real-time information. Okay. That's all. That could continue to run. So that I know it needs to cost some costs on it. Bus priorities, and I would also put some money into shelters and infrastructure. But also, please, Natasha, something I've learned in Cornwall, also with First and Go Ahead, is we need to work out bus priority. So when we put in the shelter, can we just also look at the bus border and the castle curb and the drop curb for passengers with reduced mobility, wheelchairs, etc., because that does need to be done at the same time than just putting in a spectacular new shelter with the word Somerset Council on the side. Thanks, Richard.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll just get Natasha to answer a couple of those points, and I think it would probably for First to answer one of the others, but we'll wait for that. But we are very much in discussions with all our bus operators all the time. I just put that. So Natasha.
Yes, thank you. So just to reassure David on the 126, we are certainly talking to North Somerset. That's obviously a jointly funded route, and it is on the list, but you probably don't see it because I haven't listed each individual route. But under other targeted initiatives, that's where the BSIP plus funded routes come, and obviously, as you say, 126 is one of those routes. So that is one we are reviewing and talking to North Somerset on. In terms of the length of the funding, yes, obviously we're very conscious of the fact it's a year's worth of funding. We might be able to look at some small initiatives, but they will only be on a trial basis, and we're kind of looking at what's possible and looking at trying to see just what level of demand there might be for certain for certain areas. So we are aware of that. And I'm sure First will come on and say, but I'm certain that there's a £2.40 town fair in Taunton as well that was that will be introduced once the £1.50 comes to an end. But Terence may want to add more to that.
Okay, thanks for that, David. I've got Dave Mansell next. Dave.
Yes, thank you, Richard, and thank you, Natasha, for the presentation. There is a lot to welcome there. I will just say, if I may, that serving rural areas is important as well. I do appreciate levels of usage in urban and so on, but it does have to be noted that there are significant populations in rural areas which have become very underserved by public transport, and with some services on a ongoing spiral of decline. As the service gets worse, less people can use them, and we've really got to start reversing that, because the decline has reached bad levels, and as I say, we need to look at reversing that. So I'm hoping there will be some of that which emerges from this. I've got two questions. One, on the digital or the demand responsive services, and digital, all moving digital sounds very good. I am sort of quite conscious, though, that we don't, there's not a good understanding shared of how well used those services are. I wonder if we could be told a little bit more about that, and in particular, perhaps going forward, could we be provided with some statistics, please, so we can actually be aware of how well used those services are. And I'm conscious they need more promotion, and that has started, because there is quite a lack of awareness of them as well. And secondly, Natasha, you may have hinted a little bit in your last answer, but could a little bit more be said about the other service improvements and trials, particularly outside of the main urban area, the big urban areas that have been mentioned? Could we have any sort of further indication what may emerge in the way of service improvements and trials for other areas? Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Dave. I think I'm going to cut in on the question of the DDRT, which is, as far as I'm concerned, has gained a lot of success, and I'm sure Natasha will be able to provide statistics in due course. But I just want to make sure you understand that just because it is digital, it doesn't mean that it excludes people that are not digitally in place. There is a phone number that people can use, and in the area that we've brought this in, we've done a lot of work to make the service understood, and obviously when we roll it out to the other, if we roll it out to the other areas, we'll do an equally good piece of work to make sure that people understand, and it's an ongoing program of explaining exactly what the service does, and I think we've had an upward trajectory with usage on that. But I'll let Natasha just confirm or deny what I've just said, and fill in on the other points, and just to say that I also share your concerns about rural areas, but yeah, it's a balancing act, I think it's fair to say.
Thank you. And yes, Richard is right. I haven't got the figures to hand with me just this moment in terms of the Somerton DRT, but we have seen that the numbers have been steadily increasing. I will certainly put something together, and perhaps at the next board meeting I can do something on DRT and how well they're all performing and what's happening in each area. We are doing a lot more promotion, not just on the Somerton DRT, but on the other DRTs in the area, just to try and raise awareness, make people aware that they're there and they can use them. And we've had a change in terms of eligibility. Previously, there was something around you shouldn't have access to your own vehicle. We've removed that now. So if people haven't got access to a bus service or can't get to the bus service, they can then look to book their local DRT service. So that's out there. And then in terms of the other more specific schemes, I just think it's probably just a bit too early for us to kind of go into detail on those just yet. We are still working through a large kind of list of requests and suggestions. We're trying to cost everything, look at what's possible, talking to operators at the moment. But as we progress through the governance and go through planning and transport subcommittee or scrutiny, we'll hopefully have a little more detail as we get to each of those stages to be able to share.
Thank you. Do you want a quick comeback, or are you happy with that, David?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's fine for now, and I look forward to the further stages. Thank you.
Before I go to Tony Rees, which I'm just coming to, I would just like to also point out on the DDRT the amazing promotion that the Somerset Bus Partnership has put on. In particular, Tony has done an awful lot to promote the service, and also Rosa. I don't know if she's on the call, which has been fantastically helpful. So I'll now move on to Tony's question.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. One is, can the extension of the Somerton DDRT actually be extended to a slightly larger radius rather than just making others also digital? There is a problem, and I want to raise it now and a number of times in the future, that with the DRT services, we've drawn borders, which are fine for operational reasons, but they don't help customers who actually want to cross a border. There are a couple of villages where two Slinky services serve the same village, and it's possible to meet and change. And I really think it would be worthwhile if we could look at all the border villages and say, can we actually have two services? It doesn't confuse the customer. It does confuse the drivers, possibly, and the people doing the rotas. But it would make more sense. I've been also asked about new bus stops and said they've introduced some in Melksham. So when we're talking to other people, perhaps we could look at Melksham's bus service, bus posters with displays and see whether they could help, certainly identifying the cost and how they've gone about it. And if at the back of our minds we're talking about a Heart of Wessex system, it would be nice if we start by doing things in concert and the same way as other councils. I've also been asked about the Taunton Mobility Hub. I know it's not part of Natasha's presentation, but do we have any information yet about the bus priority schemes in Taunton and the Mobility Hub, and how those things are progressing? Or will that be part of somewhere else on the agenda, or is it part of one of our next BUS meetings? Thank you for those.
Thank you, Tony. Yes, I'll bring in Natasha. In particular on the borders of the Somerton trial. I know that they were extended in certain areas at request. I suspect that that there's probably operational reasons around the borders. However, point taken. So I'll pass over to Natasha on that one.
Thank you. In terms of the Somerton border, so obviously, like I said, we're reviewing all of our BSIP funded schemes, so we'll be reviewing this one as well. We've had suggestions as to how borders could potentially be changed. So again, it's part of our wider considerations. And like I said, I can't make any promises as yet, but it's all part of the wider BSIP project we're looking at. In terms of feeding into other services, I think I need to take that away and just have a little bit more thought around how that might work and how we might be able to do that. I mean, we've certainly always said with DRT we could feed into bus services. So if somebody wanted to go to a central point within an existing area and then catch a bus for their onward travel, we've been able to do those sorts of things. But just need to think about the logistics of being able to link up. So leave that with me. I'll take that away. Noted the point about the Melksham bus services, so we'll have a look at that. And then the Taunton Mobility Hub. We don't have an update further on the agenda. Don't want to put him on the spot, but if Mark Stanistreet on the call thinks he might be able to provide an update, then that's a possibility. Otherwise, we'll bring it back to another board.
I'd be quite happy to come back to the next board meeting with the presentation, but in high level terms, design work's ongoing on the Taunton hub, and also discussions are underway on the rural hub as well. But like I say, I'll bring the presentation to the next board if I may, Chairman.
I think that would be a great idea. I think we would all enjoy hearing about the progress that we're making on those hubs. It's vital for Somerset that we get this right. Okay, I'm going to bring in Peter, and I think we'll try and make that the last question. I don't see any others. So Peter.
Thanks, Richard. Well, the BSIP award was good news, and we're seeing that epitomised by talk of upgrading bus services in Yeovil and Bridgewater, which were the priorities that Somerset Bus Partnership put forward, and we're glad that you've recognised the logic of that. On the issue of DDRT, I would endorse your comments about Tony. I think Tony has been probably the prime promoter of DDRT, with the help of Rosa as well. I think the difficulty with DDRT is how you assess its worthiness in relation to fixed routes, and there is a fixed route between Wellington and Wivelicium on the wish list. The cost per passenger is a criteria, per passenger journey is a criteria used elsewhere, and I think it would be an interesting piece of information for Natasha to look into, is to look at the cost per passenger subsidy for each journey of fixed routes which are being supported and DDRT. It doesn't mean that one would rule out DDRT because there are special reasons for it, but I think one does need to recognise the high subsidy per passenger journey that's required for DDRT. Just one final point. Yes, we very much welcome a set of criteria for bus shelters and bus information at bus stops. My understanding is that Somerset Council is looking to devolve the responsibility of bus shelters to particularly local town councils. So the criteria you might be setting would not be a cost for Somerset, but would likely be a cost for town councils. Is that a fair observation or not?
Tasha, do you want to respond in particular on the... Oh, I think Sam wants to come in as well. Is that right? So I'll go to Sam first.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on that, the devolution of assets piece. It's fair to say there are conversations with some town and parish councils around devolution of assets. The issue on bus shelters particularly is it's a mixed bag across the whole of the county. We've got some contracts in some areas. In fact, in some areas we've got more than one contract on shelters, and actually a consolidated piece is needed before we can actually devolve any assets. So actually what we're trying to do at the moment is understand the asset base, understand kind of what the kind of the existing contractual arrangements are with the various advertising agencies that have those, and then consolidate from there. So it is a bit of a mixed piece.
Okay, I forget there was another question in there, Natasha, on what it was.
I think it was referring to looking at the cost per passenger subsidy for bus routes and DDRT. And obviously we do work on that in the background. So when we are reviewing our kind of contracts, our key performance indicators, we're looking at that information. I don't have it to hand, but we do look at that. But I take Peter's point that he'd like to have a little bit more information on that in the future.
Okay, thank you. I think there's a lot to digest there on all parts. I mean, there were some very interesting suggestions that I think Natasha and the team will take away and try and disseminate. I think we'll move on now to the timetable changes proposed for the 6th of April, 2025. So I'm anticipating updates from Hatch Green, First West of England, and First South West. Is there an operator in from Hatch Green who'd like to take the lead on this? I'm guessing not. Just checking. No, not seeing anybody. So, okay, First West of England. Hello. Do we have any managers in from First West of England? Well, in that case, we'll go to First South West. Hello. Do we have any
Yes.
Do we have any operators here? Hello, Terence.
Yes, you do. Morning, Chair. Sorry, just sort of answering the question in terms of the network changes. At this stage, we don't have much to share because we're working with yourselves in terms of redesigning the network as Natasha and John would attest to in the background, and sort of just reviewing all of the routes which particularly may need funding, and all of the options to enhance the service provision within the key areas as articulated earlier.
Hello. Sorry, I missed. Sorry, Terence. You've gone. Ooh. Okay. I've got a question straight away from Peter. Peter.
My understanding, Chair, is that First South are still working with Somerset Council and also with Somerset Bus Partnership on a set of changes and that they're not currently available. My understanding with First West of England, with whom we've had limited engagement, is that they have got final proposals. Not sure about Hatch Green, but we don't seem to have a list of those changes in the agenda pack that we've been sent. So I'm not sure how we can possibly approve something that we've not yet seen.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's fair to say the timing of this meeting has made this very difficult for both Somerset Council and the operators to have more, to bring anything a bit more concrete. being assured, and I'll bring Natasha in, that we are in conversation with all the bus operators on this, and we're working very hard to get these to us. And I fully appreciate that it would have been better if we'd had something in place to bring you, but that is where we're at. I think that's fair to say, isn't it, Natasha?
Yes, sorry, yes, it is. We have been working with the operators, and yes, I'm not quite sure why First West of England aren't present. We thought they were going to be, and also Hatch Green were due to be present, but whether that's operating issues because of the recent weather that's caused problems, I don't know. But I'm trying to chase it up as we speak to see what's happened and where they are. But what we'll do is we'll find out a bit more detail, and when we're in a position to share more information, we obviously will do.
Okay, thank you, Natasha. I will bring in David and then Tony. Obviously, I'm quite
concerned about this. I mean, I'm due another call with First West of England because I'm a member of the bus advisory panel board for WECA and North Somerset as well, Richard, as you know, this afternoon with First West of England to go through the registrations, because we're close to the registration, Natasha, with the Department for Transport, with those and the Traffic Commissioner. And part of Enhanced Quality Partnerships is that First Group PLC should be here to talk to passengers. Now, I might get some of the North stuff this afternoon. I haven't got it in front of me now, otherwise, Richard, I'd send it to you immediately. But I do find this a bit unacceptable. I'm sure you do, as Vice Chair Peninsula as well as Somerset. I mean, the rules are quite clear. You know, franchising is miles away. Let's be absolutely clear about that. You and I, Richard, are on the same page. It's not going to happen overnight. And, you know, we don't even have these combined authorities yet at all. But we do have these enhanced quality partnerships in South West England, and we do expect them to work. So I would, Natasha, understand why First isn't here. Hatch Green's a smaller company. Yeah, they could very well be in an emergency. But First is a big organisation, and Terence is here from Fareham. So just make sure that is happening. But I think the least we can do is get First to, and I've had this conversation with Doug before, is at least send out now a list of changes that everybody can see if anything is happening in the Somerset, North Somerset area, Richard, that we can all comment on and send you comments back. Because otherwise we'll have no input and it'll get registered. And if Peter Travers gets upset, there'll be nothing, or Rosa Kell, there's nothing we can do about it. So today was an opportunity to say to First, like we did very successfully before with you, Richard, that we don't like it. And if we don't like it, go back and look at it, especially if you're spending our money as taxpayers. Anyway, I'll put the point there, but that's my view. And I think the group would agree with that.
Yeah, I'll bring John in, but it's safe to say that we are in a different place with our operators than we were last time round. I'm not clear as why we haven't got anybody from First West of England today. I'm sure John can elaborate on that. John?
Yeah, it is very disappointing. We were expecting them to be here, so I can only assume something has gone wrong and they're not able to attend. I mean, I can only say that the changes that I'm aware of are mainly centred around D2, and I think Peter's already had some discussion with First West of England around D2. There are also some minor changes to 373, which is mainly to do with the routing over Windmill Hill in Glastonbury. I think they just want to go in one direction. In both directions that 373 goes, they want the service to go over the hill the same way, because they're finding some issues, obviously, with the size of vehicles in that particular area, and they find it easier to go in one direction over the hill each time. And then there were some very minor changes, I think, to 173 and 20 as well, very just minor timetable changes, bits and pieces. So I think the main change that I'm aware of is D2, and then we're making some changes to those timetables, but I haven't got the detail entirely in front of me, but that's what I'm aware of. I can run through quickly Hatch Green. As you say, unfortunately, they're not here. I suspect that's more to do with flooding in the south of the county, and they may be a bit indisposed this morning because they have had issues, certainly yesterday, with their routes that serve a number of the areas where we have had issues with flooding in the county. I've just got the timetables in front of me, so I'll give a very quick update, but they are very minor bits and pieces. So on service 16, for instance, between Langport and Bridgewater, they're just adding a timing point at Middlezoy at Broadfield Park. And that's the only change they're proposing on that. So just adding a new timing point. On the 23, they're doing the same, 23, sorry, between Bishop's Lydeard and Taunton, with the journey that goes out to Willerton in the morning. Again, all they want to do is add an additional timing point on the route at Greenway at Bishop's Lydeard. On the 98, again, they're proposing to effectively change a stop name because it's not the correct one. That's out at Colmhead, so they're putting in a stop there. But these are fairly minor proposals, and that's it really. So it is really around tidying up their timetables and adding a couple of timing points where they want to put additional information in, because passengers obviously use those points quite regularly, and therefore they just want to make it clearer for passengers where they pick up. Just a couple of other bits that I can update on. We've got a couple of tenders out at the moment. So just going back to David's point about 126 earlier, First West of England did not want to extend the current contract.
Dan joined up, John. Dan has joined up. Dan Upsworth
right,
just
okay.
joined us.
Okay, just let me finish off then, and then I can give the floor to Dan, because it's just a couple of bits. So on 126, just to confirm that we are talking to North Somerset, we have in fact put a tender out. It has a number of options in it because we're not certain yet, obviously through funding both for us and North Somerset as to what we can afford. So there are options in the tender. First West of England very kindly extended the contract that was ending for one further week, so we can make the changes on the 6th of April in line with everything else. So they've agreed to that extension. The tender went out last week, and we have agreement with North Somerset that they're keen to continue to fund the service jointly with us. So that's not a problem. It's just a question of what level, of course, and that will be determined by the results we get back from the tender. So and obviously the other work we're doing and what we've covered already and what we've got available to spend across the board. So that's out to tender. And the only other one to update on is Service 99, Chard to Taunton. That contract has come to an end, so we are retendering that as it is. We're not proposing to make any changes. That's currently out to tender. Again, it was due to end on the 31st of March. Buses Somerset First South West have kindly agreed again to extend it on 1 week to the 6th of April, so everything comes in at the same time, and that's currently out. And we will have details, obviously, once the tenders awards have been made as to whether there's any changes of operator, but we're not proposing to change that timetable at all. So that's the update from me, Richard, and I'll hand back.
Thanks, John. I think you could hold questions on that. Well, I think we should go straight to Dan to give us his update, and then we'll have questions at the end.
Hello, sorry, I think I got lost somewhere in the mix of it all. So thankfully we haven't got much changing. So in terms of Somerset, the 373 will use the old Wells Road up past the hospital and come down Leg of Mutton instead of Buff Town. So that's the only change for like Wales depot services that's worth noting. Slight change to timetable, some quicker journeys. That's about it for that one. Service 173 will leave Bath and Wells 5 minutes earlier each end, just to give a bit of even spacing into Bath, but no real change to the timetable. There's 171 on a Saturday that finish in Polton rather than Wells. And then our biggest change is the D2, D2X. So D2, no change to the route, just a new 80-minute timetable. And then service D2X will be changed to go through Midford, missing out Beckington Road and Brunel Way, Critchill, straight up to Sainsbury's. That will run every 80 minutes as well, giving a combined 40-minute frequency through the week. So hoping that putting more buses through Midford gives them one nice easy route and should help spread the load out a bit so that we don't have so much overcrowding. That's kind of the top level bit from us, I suppose.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So we'll have a few questions. I'm going to go to Tony first, actually, this time, because I think he probably put his hand up first.
Okay, I just wanted to thank everybody for their input so far. We do have Southwest coaches here, so we probably ought to record whether there are any changes or not from both Southwest coaches and from Somerset County. Are there any of your routes that are changing?
With regard to Southwest coaches, no changes on the 6th of April from us.
Okay.
Sorry, on the council routes, no, we're not planning any changes other than obviously what is in the proposals for BSIP. So I've touched on 99 and the tender M126, which is out, and that's currently the only changes we have in mind. But we're obviously working on things for the BSIP money that's been covered earlier.
David, did you want to come in as well?
Yeah, my only point really is about 126, which obviously is dear to my heart, and I know Rose is not here, but hers as well, working with Hannah and North Somerset as well. Capacity issues on that service are the issues in the summer, John. We got single decks on there, and I've witnessed down at Cheddar, sometimes people nearly full and standing in corridor in the in the aisles. I wonder if we're trying to address that issue. It's the summer peak. And it's Cheddar. I mean, I'd be cheeky, Richard, and ask Longleat Estates to put some cash into this service. They used to in the past. But there is a market there, and First Great Western also tend to market as one of their rail links to Cheddar and Wells from Western Rail Station, and some of the promotions that Sister First Company does. So I just wonder if that could be really looked at. The only other thing I pass back down is cleanliness and performance of cleanliness at Wells Depot needs to improve, washing and cleaning. And of course, I realise the Wells fleet will not be in a Somerset livery, but will probably go into the green fleet of Mayor Norris or whoever the new mayor is in Weka, because I understand they're painting them out there in green. But those are my points, really. And I welcome the other changes, but yeah, that's fine. It's just that 126. It's oh, did you say there was a change on the 20, John, or Dan? Because how does that connectivity work with 21 to Taunton? Because across Highbridge and Burnham-on-Sea passengers, which again are dear to my heart because I get lobbied by them.
Okay, can I just get John to come in and then Dan?
Okay, I'll pick on 126. What I can say is that the tender that's gone out has got options in it. One of those options is to potentially increase the service during the summer. But obviously with all our tenders, we do invite operators to also put in their own suggestions. So as long as they bid on at least one option in the tender, they're perfectly able to provide other bids. So if they were providing more capacity in different ways, they can provide a bid to do that as well. But there is something in there which recognises the increased demand, especially at weekends in the summer. So that's part of the tender. And obviously, when the tenders come back, we'll have to look at that in the round in terms of all the other things that we've already covered that we want to fund with the BSIP money we have.
And Dan, on the connectivity issue?
So the 20, looking at Western's timetable here, is every 35 minutes during the day, Monday to Friday. So I'm guessing if the 21's every 30, we're only going to meet a certain number of trips in Burnham.
Okay, right. Does that answer your question, David? Questions?
Richard, just coming back on behalf of the users in the Burnham and Highbridge area and the Town Council, we are aware of the importance of connectivity, both at Burnham-on-Sea and at Highbridge Town Centre for the railway station. Those were raised rapidly with some meetings with First in the past. Can we just get that corridor looked at again, Dan? With and at one point you and South were going to share it as a through route, I was told. Then that was dropped by George, but it is an important corridor across Somerset, North Somerset, economically, links economic areas of Westmead hospitals and economic growth to follow the BSIP guidance and the guidance on bus services from the new government. So if we could have that corridor looked at to make sure it strengthens the links across that particular economic corridor as well as rural corridor. Perhaps for September, John and Richard, if that's possible with Hannah Young, thanks.
Yeah, I'll pass it on to Gary, Dave, and let him have a look.
Okay, so unless there's any more questions, I think that's it for the proposed timetable changes. For the time being, obviously, we would like a bit more detail. That there are reasons for us not having the full picture, but we are very much working with all our operators to get this as dealt with as quickly as we can. So I'm going to move on to question 7, which is updates from operators on the Taunton £1.50 fare, government £3 fare, and any other relevant updates. So I'm going to pass over. I think Terence can come in on this, and I think a question was asked earlier in the meeting on this. Terence?
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to get the camera to come back on in time. Thanks a lot, Richard. In terms of the question with regards to the £1.50 fare, yes, appreciate that that's been taken away. As you probably would know, with the price changes that we've done, we've everything within 3 miles is limit discount off at £2.40, and everything is then scaled thereafter. However, in terms of specificities associated with that, can I ask that the question be sent to me by the first inquiries mailbox, which I can share with you in the chat, and you can provide a more comprehensive response.
Okay, thanks, Terence. I mean, just to be clear, you're saying that anything below was it a 3 mile distance would fit into that £2.40, the same as what's happening in the Wecker district.
Yes.
Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
I think we got the answer then, Richard. That's the answer, so I'm happy, really. So I don't need to email Janet Bell or anybody in First or Simon. That's fine. I got the answer. Thanks, Terence. Fine, that's fine. I'm happy. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, but to reiterate the point, I will still send an email confirming that. Yeah.
Good. I think that will be appreciated by everybody on the call. Do we have anything more on this area? Any other relevant updates from any operator? I don't think we have. I think.
No, I mean, I can give you a bit of an update on the £3 fare. Because I think that was a worry how that was going to react with people. Southwest or Somerset's routes that Southwest look after, we've had a 12% reduction in overall travel in the period of 1st of January to the 27th of January. But to be honest, it's a reasonably small sort of period in order to look over, and we've had more cancellations of routes, diversions because of weather than we've ever had before. So I don't think it's a particularly good reflection of what is actually happening out there. My gut feeling is that we've had very little feedback on the £3 or the increase to £3, and I don't think it's really made that much difference to the travelling public at this precise moment. I think it's been more weather issues and the fact that there's a couple of different days. The 1st of January to 27th of January, there was probably 2 more travelling days on our behalf in 2024 than there was 2025. So at the moment, actually, the £3 fare cap doesn't seem to have had too much issues. The public seem to have taken to it actually as a positive, because a lot of them thought it was going to disappear completely. So at the moment, from our point of view, all good, really, and nothing else on our side as operators that we really need to discuss.
Excellent. Thanks, Peter.
Unless anyone's got any specific questions for us.
Yeah, that's a good point. Any specific questions on that? I think it's fair to say that that operationally it's been quite difficult due to the weather conditions recently. But you know, this is Britain, and we have to take our weather conditions on board.
Yeah, I think we went through a 5-day period, didn't we? We went from issues on routes because of winds, then issues on routes because of rain, and then that rain's froze. And yeah, rural transport is fun.
I'll leave that hanging. David, do you want to come in quickly?
Just quickly, yeah. Richard, as you know, as Vice Chair of the Peninsula, we've got network tickets in Cornwall, network tickets in Devon, Plymouth, and we've also got network tickets up in Wecker and Wiltshire. We have no network ticket in Somerset. I think there's a first ticket which doesn't get promoted enough, which covers West of England and South as a through ticket sort of. I think it's called West of England Plus or something else. It needs a better name than that, which is a ticket that takes you on all first buses in Somerset and the historic county of Somerset and up into Gloucestershire. But we don't have a ticket valid on South West coaches, Beeline coaches, part of them. And Libra Travel or First or Hatch or your own supported services. And when the other counties came in with their schemes, they were able to promote their network tickets, and that has been quite successful. And I just wonder where we are. I mean, Alan Peters of Waboa. I'm
gonna bring in Sunita.
Okay, fine,
on that
Peter,
question.
fine. Just maybe work in progress. Thanks, Richard.
Absolutely. Sunita joins me on the Peninsula board. So
thanks, Richard. As if by magic, I'm here. Yeah, there's ongoing work with Peninsula Transport about a cross-network ticket. So I think what we had concluded that we would rather join up with Peninsula Transport and do that work with them, and then that can potentially become an even, a wider than Somerset ticket, rather than putting quite a lot of time and energy into producing what would be a Somerset wide ticket for us, only to then have to go and try and expand that out. So effectively we're working with Peninsula on all the back office work to try and make that happen at this point in time. But I don't have at this point a time frame for rollout or anything on that. It's with Peninsula to manage.
Thank you, Sunita. Okay, I think we need to move on. I'm going to hand over to Peter as chair of the bus user stakeholders group, and whether Peter can give us an update on that, please.
Thanks, Richard. Well, since the last meeting of the Bus Advisory Board in October, so much has happened on buses. And for once, it's mostly very good news. We've had mentioned that Somerset Council was awarded over £6 million in the BSIP 2025 settlement. On an annual basis, that's substantially better than previously. And this creates opportunities, and we've heard mention of these today. What we've seen happen in Taunton when it became Somerset's bus town, we need similarly to seize the opportunity and carry that over to other towns, albeit we're still waiting for the capital schemes in Taunton to deliver. And I think it's important that at the next meeting of the Bus Advisory Board, we do get an update from Mark on what's happening on both bus priority and the mobility hub. Work has, I'm sure, been going on, but nothing so far has yet been delivered. But we've identified Yeovil and Bridgewater, and I'm glad to see that Natasha concurs that they should be prioritised with the 2025 BSIP. Yeovil's bus services we've heard a lot about. They need to be improved. An evening bus service would be a major step forward. And Bridgewater, because it's going to be such an economic powerhouse in our county, we need to ensure we have the bus infrastructure and the services to support the town's expansion with sustainable travel options. Then in December, the buses bill was introduced. This will give more power to local authorities getting more power will mean that local authorities, or at least the combined authority, would need to step up its staffing to handle its significantly expanded role on public transport. Also in December, Sarah Dyke, one of our MPs, led a major parliamentary debate on rural transport, making the point, as did Gideon Amos later that month, that Somerset Council has the worst rated bus services in the country. In December also came the announcement, which Lee Fletcher has raised in one of his questions, that Somerset plans to join the Heart of Wessex Combined Authority. This came out of the blue, it hadn't been consulted on, but it is a step forward because it can pave the way for bus franchising to come to Somerset. David Redwell suggested that might be some time away, but at least we can start to prepare for it. And as Lee Fletcher has pointed out, we've already seen the leader of Wiltshire Council endorsing bus franchising. So far, and again today in this meeting, Somerset has been strangely silent on the issue of bus franchising. We've are aware that our Somerset Lib Dem MPs, and indeed the council itself, will note that it is a fundamental part of Lib Dem policy stance on transport to introduce bus franchising. We will be seeking our MPs' help to ensure that the new Heart of Wessex seeks to introduce bus franchising across the combined authority. That, of course, will be a decision for the mayor, whoever that person might be, and we will be active in the Somerset Bus Partnership and with the newly formed network across the Heart of Wessex to ensure bus franchising is a cornerstone of the manifestos. What is so much better with our new team of Somerset MPs that all 7 of them have been actively engaged on bus issues in their constituencies, something we found frustrating previously that a number of the MPs did not engage, but we've seen a different approach. The Somerset Bus Partnership has recently met with all the MPs in the Somerset Council area. As I've mentioned, Sarah Dyke's been particularly active and has raised the issue of Somerset's buses on a number of times in the House of Commons, as has Gideon Amos. We know that Rachel Gilmore, Adam Dance, Tessa Munt, Ashley Fox and Anna Sabine have all been active dealing with constituents' concerns over buses because they've been talking to us about those issues. Anna also got Channel 4 down to Somerset to do a major news feature on the challenges facing bus users in Frome. We're really grateful for their support, their engagement on bus issues, and indeed their very hard-working MPs that we now have. The April change date is now looming. I was anticipating we were going to give formal approval today, but I don't think that's possible to do. I would like to acknowledge the work that's gone into arriving at those changes by Somerset's bus officers and the bus operators. We've engaged with First West of England to make, indeed, in the main, very small, but in the case of the D2, quite dramatic modifications to their timetables. We appreciate that they have engaged with us. The issue of the 126 is to be resolved now with Somerset Council with a new tender. And whilst First South needs more time to finalise its April timetable, I would like to acknowledge how well they've engaged and how extensively they've engaged with Somerset Bus Partnership. In January alone, members of Somerset Bus Partnership, I think, have had 6 separate meetings with the First South team, discussing everything from their future strategy for growth to individual issues on routes, of which I have to say there have been many. But First South has shown a willingness to consult both at director level and at an operational level, and we really welcome that and value their approach. Finally, we in the Somerset Bus Partnership are preparing to embark on another programme of bus stalls for the April timetable changes in order to ensure there is wider awareness of the new timetable, particularly a problem when the new timetable comes in on April the 6th for those people waiting at bus stops, often with no information otherwise apart from the information we give out at our bus stalls. In 2024, we organised over 100 bus stalls in all the towns and many of the villages across Somerset. No other local transport authority gets so much voluntary, unfunded support to help promote its bus services. But we're pleased to do it because easily accessible information about bus times for those without smartphones is very hard to get in Somerset. And of course, Somerset Council currently has no RTI, and even if they roll it out, it will only be in the major terminals. We're very grateful to our many volunteers who we've mentioned in this meeting, both Tony and Rosa. Rosa has done an extraordinary job of attending so many bus stalls, as indeed have others. But Rosa is absolutely exceptional. They've all helped Somerset Bus Partnership to play an important role in working with the bus operators, First South and First West of England, who supplied us with very significant numbers of timetables. We've also printed, I think, 40,000 timetables ourselves to promote better bus services for Somerset, which is what we all want to do. Thank you very much, Richard.
And thank you, Peter. I think we all echo what you've said there in actually pretty much everything you've said. It's great that we are getting a very good relationship between the bus partnership, the operators, and Somerset Council, and I think that should be noted. And yes, absolutely, we need to note the fantastic work that Rosa Curl has delivered in the area, especially with promotion of both bus routes and the DDT routes. Okay, so I'm going to move on to any other business. I think we've already brought up the suggestion that Mark brings us a bit of an update at the next meeting, or at a meeting on the bus hubs. David's got his hand up. Any other business, David?
Yeah, a couple of bits. Just remind everybody, 31st of this month, the Secretary of State for Transport has her integrated transport plan out for consultation, and I hope everybody's going to take part in that, including Somerset Council and Peninsula. And then the sister SDB has its consultation. I know a number of Somerset Bus Partnership people have been on that call. I'm first. Remember, you've got to have your submissions into Western Gateway on the 2nd of February. Remember, why Western Gateway is important is Western Gateway's transport services go through Somerset down to Dorset. So comments on the Bristol Weymouth Railway and Yeovil, bus services through Yeovil to Dorset, coach services proposals, and I welcome the coach forum on Peninsula as well. Bus rail integration is something we haven't discussed for a while. I think it's probably something that is in the plan. Maybe useful to have Andrew Ardley and the new rail officer at First Great Western to attend and have a conversation about that point. Would be very useful, especially as we develop the plan for integrated transport in Somerset. And then I just say to Dan Ashworth, we still need the information racks at Bath Bus Station for services into Somerset. Rosa made that point as well. We both had a visit there. The travel centre has been let to an environment group, which is great, but we do need bus information there, and perhaps that can be passed back to Baines officers as well, Richard. That needs to be actioned with WECA. So I'm just concerned that we do take part. And I just put this caution to everybody. I was at a meeting of WECA yesterday, which is still in special measures, but Secretary of State has not mapped out these combined authorities yet, and in the North East is remapping. There's a consultation with the public. I know Richard know this. There's a consultation with the public. There's a consultation with the councils. There's a consultation with adjacent councils to happen. We're all in unitary round here, except Gloucestershire and Devon in the southwest. And Peninsula Transport doesn't vanish just because we bring in Wessex. So there has to be a work there as well. I know what Somerset Bus Partnership's doing, but the days we've got a Wessex mayor at the moment are still got to go through Parliament, have still got to go through a lot of processes, I think Richard has explained. So I would just ask them to think about their enthusiasm. It might not even be the area they put Somerset into. There was another meeting where the Police and Crime Commissioner, who covers Somerset and WECA area, said that maybe it should be jigged another way. None of that is decided. It's a proposal by Somerset, am I right, Richard? Dorset, Wiltshire and Bournemouth, and it's that proposal supported. But it's got to go to government, and the bill's not gone through. So if we do all this work on an authority that is supposedly going to be set up, wait and see a little bit further down the road where we are. Please concentrate on the existing frameworks. That's Western Gateway, Somerset Council and Peninsula at the moment for your transport needs. The rest will come along as the government develops integrated transport, nationalisation of South Western Railway and nationalisation. The other thing I'm going to say, Richard, we've still got to pick up these coach issues. I'm really worried we still are losing National Express coaches into the county and other services. We do need an update of that, and Peninsula need to keep fighting that with Gateway. We can't lose coach services into South West England. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks, David. There was a few bits of other business and a very well articulated plea there, which I think I fully understand. And yes, you're absolutely right. We've made a submission. The councils of Somerset, Dorset, Wiltshire and BCP, which is Bath and Poole area, unitaries. We've made a submission to government that we would like to pursue a mayoral metro situation as laid out by them, and we await what government has to say about that. So you are right to say it is early doors on that, and we must use all the current available ways to promote what we're trying to do. I think that's absolutely fair. Right, if there's no other business, we'll take away what your suggestions are on other business, David. But if there's nothing more, I'd just like to bring the dates of the next meeting, which are to be held on Tuesday. The next scheduled meeting is Tuesday the 29th at 10. It's Tuesday 29th of April 2025 at 10 a.m. And also, let me just, sorry, and also the future meetings after that will be the 24th of June and the 14th of October. So I think on that note, we can draw the meeting to a close, and thank you all for attending. And I look forward to seeing you all in April. And by then we should have a bit more to update you with.